Hello and welcome to another edition of the E-commerce Odyssey podcast. I'm here with Paul Rafelson of Rafelson Law, and Paul is an expert, in fact, the expert in e-commerce law. So we're going to talk about all things to do with law and e-commerce. So, first question, Paul: what points of law do e-commerce sellers need to pay most attention to, and what do people kind of fall down on?
Okay, so great question. I do have to preface this by saying the word expert is kind of like a no-no in the legal world, but I do know a lot about it. Let's just say I know a lot about e-commerce and law. Let's just say
I know
I've done it for a number of
advice.
years. It's what I specialize in. It's my focus, but they don't like the word expert. So I just want to be. But to answer your question, what is e-commerce law? E-commerce law is an interesting. It's an interesting concept that I sort of came up with it so a little background about me. 20 years ago, or no, I don't know, whatever 2003 and 4 was, however many years ago that was from here, I used to sell on Amazon. I used to sell on half.com and all these platforms. I was a reseller. I was doing what they call retail arbitrage. They didn't call it retail arbitrage back then. So I've been in this game for a long time. My wife has actually worked for seller performance at Amazon. So I used to hang out with the seller performance team. So I was not, and because I was a seller, I was naturally interested in the conversations that they would have over dinner. So I've been around this e-commerce world for a long time, even though I've never been a seller like my clients, like at that scale. But I was a seller early on in life. And what I ended up doing in my life after kind of leaving my business of selling to kind of help support law school and all those things is I went to work for really big companies like Microsoft, Walmart, GE. So companies that focused on national commerce and international commerce. And what drew me to e-commerce is this idea that we are supporting something called the international small business. This is a concept that never existed, could not have existed but for e-commerce, right? There was no such thing. Nobody say I'm running an international small business out of my kitchen table in the 1980s, right? That just could not happen. It did happen with the advent of e-commerce. So what I think e-commerce law is, I think it's a hodgepodge of having to know just the right amount of certain bodies of law that are really important and having a national and international minded focus, right? So it's a very different scenario to help you. If you want to open a tea shop online to sell tea around the world, right? That's very different than opening up a tea shop in the middle of town, even though the tea shop in the middle of town may actually require more work, more permitting, right? What you have to look out for is very different. So you have to be aware of a couple things. You got to be aware of intellectual property law. You got to be aware of corporate and business law. You got to be aware of consumer protection law. You've got to be aware of environmental law, right? All these things kind of come together on Amazon. So being an e-commerce lawyer, in my opinion, is sort of having a national and international minded focus and being sort of in tune just enough with certain bodies of law that are really important to e-commerce sellers. Doesn't mean you have to be the world's trademark expert. By no means is that required, right? But you do need to know when you'll need that expert, right? Sometimes you got to call in for reinforcements if you have a really complicated case. But what I think makes e-commerce law interesting, it's very scalable because it's very like we kind of know our clients better than they know themselves even before we've met them, right? Even though the products are different, even though it's like, but we've been through this before, right? We know just the amount of what they need in each area. So it's an interesting area of law that I think it's still being developed to this day, and I love the fact that we were kind of on the forefront of this.
Okay, so let's talk about the kind of cross-border thing, because that's the kind of stuff that I come across. If I'm a UK seller selling into the USA, what kind of things do I need to take note of?
Sure. So obviously you're going to want, again, intellectual property is key. So you want to, whether you're in the UK or the US, but you want to make sure you have a US, if you're a brand owner, you want to make sure you have a US trademark, right? You want to make sure that that's happening, right? Because having just a UK trademark isn't going to be enough. You want to consider what is your appropriate corporate setup. Like, do you need an LLC in the US? What are the pros and cons? You want to make sure you have insurance set up. You want to make sure, you have everything you need. You also want to make sure that you're complying with US law. So that can be state law, that can be federal law. So for example, if you go on Amazon and Google Prop 65 Amazon, there's a whole page dedicated to Prop 65, which is a California specific environmental law. That can get you, not following it can get you into a little bit of trouble sometimes. So things like that are really important. So you kind of really need somebody to sort of be a navigator and help you figure out, and this is what we do with UK and foreign-based sellers all the time who want to sell in the US. If the product you're selling is a bicycle helmet, you want to make sure that you're complying with consumer product safety commission laws, CPSC laws. So if it's a product that is regulated by FDA, maybe you're selling some type of water filter that goes into a Brita machine or something, right? Then you may need some FDA help there. It's those little things, those little nuances that get people, because for the longest time, Amazon didn't really police this stuff. Now they are. So we're seeing what we're seeing is, especially with FDA compliance, like Food and Drug Administration, FDA, a lot of people have kind of gotten away with not following it for the longest time. Now it's like their listings can be just down for months because Amazon's now kind of cracking down on that. And that some of that has to do with the shift of how Amazon sort of sees liability and who's responsible for when things go wrong. So there's sort of a whole nother story we'll probably get into later about that, why that is. But that's sort of what we're seeing in a nutshell.
Because I really noticed that, Amazon particularly has ramped up. It's now got its kind of account health thing. There's all kinds of different policy compliance things, which are very, very hard to answer. And I've actually just spent the last 2 days trying to solve an Amazon suspension problem, which has been very boring. What is your right as a seller if you get an account suspension? What are your rights as a seller? Is there anything you can do from a kind of legal point of view?
So what are your rights? You don't really have a lot of rights in that, in the United States, at least. You're limited to sort of certain arbitration. Amazon has the right to sort of, protect itself, right? So you're kind of running up against that reality. So, your rights aren't really clear. What we do know is that in our work and working with the antitrust subcommittee, sort of being advocates for sellers. So in my spare time, I run a nonprofit called the Online Merchants Guild, and we advocate. What I've learned, though, is the way to sort of establish rights with Amazon, especially if you're a US-based seller, is to look at where Amazon is concerned. Amazon's in a situation right now. We're in an environment where the government wants to break up Amazon. They want to regulate Amazon. So they're very concerned about members of Congress hearing horror stories, right? So if you're in a situation where, you're unjustly shut down, right, and your business is at the verge of collapse, one way that we can leverage is we can work with members of Congress and say, hey, look, this is happening, and they may inquire on your behalf, and they sometimes can get things done that others can't. So and this is just sort of one example. There's many ways we can leverage the scenario and the environment that Amazon is in to try to sort of establish some rights. We did work on a law in California called, I believe it was like SB 66 back in 2019, which tried to sort of establish the first Bill of Rights. But actually, and there the idea was that Amazon had what that actually led to was the 72-hour notice. If you actually want to know where the 72-hour notice came from, it came from our lobbying in California.
What is this 72-hour notice? I haven't come across that.
So it's the idea that they won't suspend your account without 72 hours of notice. Like they say you're on.
Certainly doesn't happen in the UK.
Yeah, it's a US thing. It's a California thing, but it actually became a US. When California does it, it effectively becomes a US thing. So that's the idea of that. Came from the United States. It came from there, but it's by no means like it's actually funny. One of the things that we've been pushing through our advocacy group, Online Merchants Guild, is the idea of a federally written seller bill of rights in the United States. That that Amazon will not take certain action against you without appropriate warning and opportunity to cure, and that the action will be reasonable and that they will handle it. Like we basically want to see a seller bill of rights come about. That's actually one of our goals that we're trying to push. But for now, you have to navigate the suspension web, and that's what we do. We have a team and we have ways, and what we like to do is we like to work the process with Amazon, and when we feel that process is broken, it's not working, then we bring it up to Amazon's attention, and we'll go through various channels, whatever channels we can, we'll go through. If that includes members of Congress and who are interested in seeing what Amazon's doing to the sellers, we'll do it, and we'll show them the fact pattern, and we'll get and to get Amazon's attention, so that somebody who with authority will actually look at this and say, that's wrong. That shouldn't be. As
I say, I just had an experience where we had a problem. We weren't selling. We had a Singaporean account, which we weren't even using. We missed some policy warnings on it from this kind of historical listings. And they shut down not only the Singapore account, but they shut down almost every other account we have as well. So all our European accounts and our Australian accounts and our Japanese account, which seemed disproportionate.
Well, I would look for those. I don't know. I'm not familiar with the British political system, but I would definitely tell you. Certainly we'd love to help you. So certainly, after this call, I'd love to get online, get you on my team, and have them talk to you and see what we can do. But I mean, one of the things you can do is, first of all, we still write emails to Jeff at Amazon.com as the, sort of, second to last form of escalation before we go other routes. But talk to your MPs. I don't know who politically in UK is most critical of Amazon and the monopoly. Find those folks and talk to them and let them know and have them make inquiries on your behalf. Like have them, because they can actually get, right, Amazon to respond, right?
Nice.
They have people on their committee that can say, hey, one of my constituents reached out to me, and this seems really stupid, and it seems like your bot system is in an infinite loop of nonsense. And my constituent wants to like bang his head against the wall. Could you please have somebody smart and with authority look at this case? And a lot of times it works, right? I mean, I had a M&A, mergers and acquisitions deal with an aggregator. It almost went totally afoul when a client submitted somebody from China submitted like a bogus takedown using Copyright Act called the Digital Millennium Copyright Act. No identifying my client's own artwork that he drew as infringing on their copyright that they stole. Classic move we see when China-based companies can act with impunity on the system. And what we did was we knew who his state senator was. We knew him very well, and we said this. We sent an email to the state senator and said, "This happened. My client's about to lose a big deal. We don't have 14 days to wait for this is really bad." Within 45 minutes, the senator contacts me and says, "What is the seller's merchant token?" Kind of like not sure what that means, but when a senator's asking for a merchant token, they're talking to Amazon, right? And then within an hour from that, I get an email from my client saying, "Bam, I'm back online." So I mean, right now, like the way. What I try to preach is, when I used to work for really big companies like Microsoft, GE, like we lobbied, right? We worked together, but what we realize is like these companies are not invulnerable. Like Amazon is genuinely afraid of regulation. They're afraid of EU regulation. They're afraid of US regulation. Hit them where it hurts, right? Find out where the weak points are and go there, right? It's a classic strategy to try to get answers to your questions. But what I would do first before you do that is make sure you're in the right. So I would work with people who know this stuff, So like I said, I would invite you, to please talk to my team, have us take a look at the case, make sure that everything's in ducks in a row, because I don't like to do that unless I know my client's in the right? Like Amazon is completely wrong on this. I don't want to do that and then find out, well, duh, you were missing up this, that, and the other, because then you lose it, right?
Yeah.
So okay. I like to go to Amazon. When I go to those escalation tasks, I like to have clean hands, right? That's the key. I want everything's got to be perfect. All even if you're wrong, it's okay as long as you right the wrong, or as long as the right can be wrong. You know what I mean? So those are really important. But I would encourage you to, don't, American sellers, same thing too. Contact your congressperson, contact your senator. Those are always ways. But we help our clients do this all the time. We really do. It's one of our many strategies that we use to push. We had one over the weekend where we had to do something like that, and it works. And we have a good dialogue with Amazon because they know that Congress listens to us, but we're not. One thing is we don't charge our clients more money for these types of service. This is all part of a flat rate plan. So it's like whether we get it done with one appeal or whether we have to go all the way to the mat. Like we don't charge an escalation fee. Like we don't do anything like that. We don't profit from the idea that we're very good at this, because that's, to me, is dishonest and improper. So it's just got to be.
I mean, my experience with Amazon is that you've just got to they engage with the process and just follow the process, and you'll probably get out the other side. Because
absolutely. No, I mean, this is. Yeah, I mean, again, what I'm talking about is when the process doesn't work, right? When we can say we follow the process, because the first thing we always do is we follow the process. And then when there's an irretrievable breakdown of the process, that's where we go, okay, well, what can we do for this person now? Okay.
Yeah.
But we do have to show, coming in with clean hands, as I'm sort of saying, in my opinion, part of that is saying we did try to work the process.
Yeah.
The process doesn't seem to work, right? We're reporting this as almost like a bug, right?
Okay. Cool. So I've got another question for you. Liability. So you're a customer, you're buying from a wholesale or something, product goes wrong. What is your general kind of, is the liability, is that with the retailer or is that with the supplier? What would be the?
Interesting question. So the way it works in the United States is if somebody gets injured using a product that you sold, even if you didn't make it, right? Even if you're just a middleman, like you're just reselling or arbitraging, or if you did make it, like everyone can be liable. It's called strict liability. So the seller, the retailer can be liable. That could be Amazon, right? It could be you, depending on who you ask, right? The court sort of see Amazon now as the retailer. So that's where the law is going. So Amazon is typically held liable. And then, but so basically it's a matter of who can you sue. So let's put the logic of this. Let's take a step back. Imagine, for example, you bought a product. The product was made by a seller based in China. You sue the seller in China. You can't sue the seller in China because they're in China. There's nothing you can do, right? So you're injured and you want to sue Amazon, but Amazon's like, hey, we're just the flea market. We didn't do anything. We're just providing like the real estate, the digital real estate for you to sell, right? And then you're kind of out of luck, right? Well, that was the case in Oberdorf. A Pennsylvania case, and that's kind of was the first case where the courts are like, wait a minute, Amazon's a little more than just kind of the real estate here. They're not just renting a mall, right? A stall at a mall digitally, right? They're really more involved in the transaction. They're kind of are the retailer. And so there's sort of an injustice element that the courts are looking at. And they're saying, you know what, Amazon, you're going to be responsible for this because to the extent that there's going to be people in China who have no insurance, who are nowhere, who can't be sued, right? Then there's a lot of injustice for those who are injured. So Amazon will now what we're seeing in the last few years is Amazon is now always named in every lawsuit. It seems like they're almost always named in every lawsuit involving injury. So if you sell a product, somebody gets hurt, most likely you'll get sued, Amazon will get sued. And that's pretty much the way it goes. So what happens when what happens when that happens? What happens to you? So Amazon will immediately say to you, and they'll say, hey, seller, we just got sued in this lawsuit. We need to know that you're going to hold us harmless. You're going to indemnify us. So please, respond notifying us that you're going to hold us harmless. Ultimately, you're going to have to do that. But the way you do that is you don't just say yes. You contact your insurance company. Now, most recently in the last year or so, Amazon started requiring that you name Amazon as additional insured on your insurance policy. So
Yeah,
they
I've
should be
noticed
named.
that. That's just happened to me.
Yeah. So that's the key, is that you have that insurance policy for at least $1 million. To me, $1 million is not enough. I think it should be more. But at least for the United States, because we're in the United States, our liability for lawsuits is very high. But Amazon requires $1 million. They require them to be named as additional insured. So basically, you're going to contact your insurance company, and you're going to pressure them to basically give Amazon, assurance that you're covered, and that's pretty much it. And then from there, your insurance company should hopefully handle provide you with a law firm and a lawyer to handle the case, and you shouldn't have to do much else from that.
Okay.
But the reality is that's back in the day before there was this requirement that Amazon, before you even had to have insurance, Amazon didn't check. Like they required it, but they didn't check it. There was just a lot of people selling on Amazon, and what shifted was cases like the Oberdorf case, where the court said, no, Amazon, you are actually liable. You are strictly liable. You're part of the strict liability chain. That's what sort of changed, and that's where Amazon started going and saying, okay, we're actually going to police this insurance requirement now. So Amazon is actually policing it. So in some ways, it's better because now everybody has insurance, so you should be covered. You'll have your insurance company will provide you with a lawyer. But that's the nature, and just so people understand how strict liability works. The idea is that I, as the injured party, have the right to sue anybody in the supply chain, right? From up, from anywhere from top to bottom, right? From manufacturer to retailer, whomever I can recover from. So let's say, you're unreachable, you sue Amazon, you win. Amazon still has the right to sue up the chain, going to you or your supplier to recover their losses, saying that you're the ones who actually are at fault. Right. It's just the idea of strict liability is that the consumer, the injured party, should not have to struggle with trying to find the appropriate party. Like everyone in the chain is liable, jointly and severally, as we say. So it doesn't matter who you go after, you're all liable. And then it's up to the supply chain to figure it out among themselves how to really redistribute the
what I'm saying is be properly insured, I think. Would that be the take home?
Yes, and really, consider more than $1 million, I would say. And the other thing is also look at your insurance policy and consider other policies, such as errors and omissions, E&O policies. Ask about things like Prop 65 in California, Proposition 65 in California. It's environmental law. Ask about not having a website that's compliant with the Americans with Disabilities Act. Ask them, what coverage do you need for something like that? Because those are the things that are getting people too. This is not necessarily Amazon specific, but these things do happen when you're in typically a lot of Amazon sellers have a website. Amazon does have a Proposition 65 issue, disclaimer on their website. I would talk to your insurance broker about these types of issues and see if you can get additional insurance to cover those types of issues as well. So, sometimes it's called E&O, errors and omissions insurance, but talk to your broker about that, just getting those extra bits of coverage for those kinds of things. If there's any, incidental infringement insurance, that would be great too, for accidental infringement, if it's possible. But like I said, more than $1 million is probably better if it's not unreasonable to get, 2, 3, 4 million. I would pay for it. The bigger you are, the more I would pay for bigger insurance policies.
Okay, so what about I got a question for you. I don't know if you do much stuff with eBay these days, but I've had a various eBay Vero complaints, which is where someone has been accusing us of misusing their intellectual property. And it seems to me that there's these companies, that brands will hire a company to police this stuff on their behalf, and they will accuse the seller of doing something. And a lot of the time it seems that they are overzealous, but there's no way of it's very difficult to get the thing removed. Have you got any advice about that?
Yeah. Are you talking in the context of reselling, or are you talking more in the context of just being very aggressive with accusations?
No, more specifically, because I'm a reseller. So, for example, we would buy a product from a wholesaler, and the wholesaler would say, yeah, you can sell that wherever. We list it on eBay. The company would, the brand would have some person policing their brand, and they'd say, oh, this seller is selling this product, is misusing our intellectual property. So we have bought a product from a registered, a legitimate wholesaler, but this brand is kind of illegitimately getting their products removed from eBay.
So I'm going to have to go back and look at Vero. So we have the same issue with Amazon, right? So we have a ton. We've developed a real cult following in one of our programs called Seller Basics with our resellers because of our aggressive approach on people. So brands using, so this sounds like this. Tell me this is what this is, but let's say I'm selling a North Face jacket or something, a fleece from North Face, and North Face will use, brand registry tools maybe to report infringement or counterfeit.
Yeah, because even though it's not a counterfeit, it's
even though I bought it directly from your website, or right, and they're saying it's because you're not an authorized dealer, right? So they're trying to control distribution, map violation, a number of reasons, right? And so they're saying that then they're trying to rely on a body of case law that sort of a little bit gray, that sort of takes what we have as the first sale doctrine in the United States, and this idea that you have the right to quality control and certain other elements that to basically say that if you're not following those guidelines, that could be infringement. So in Amazon land, there's a clear policy on Amazon that you cannot use Amazon's brand registry tools for the purposes of controlling distribution. In other words, Amazon says we respect the first sale doctrine, which is the US law doctrine that says anything you own legally, you have the right to resell legally. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Right.
Same in the UK.
Right. Amazon. Right. So Amazon has this law, and it's very clear. So what we do with Amazon, and we do this more often, is we say, what we do is we go after when brands file these IP complaints against our clients, our members of Seller Basics. It's a free service we provide. We go after the brand. We say, look, if you don't retract this thing right away, we're going to package this up to Amazon and let them know that you're abusing the brand registry system and get your brand registry rights taken away. And that's something we've done, right? Amazon has told us that the work we do, they will strip a brand of their brand registry rights if they find out that they're using services like brand registry for purposes of enforcing distribution, trying to control distribution, limiting resellers, etc. With eBay, it's even crazier. So I don't know the Vero policy off the top of my head. I'd have to ask my team, because we don't get a lot of Vero clients, mainly because, for one, it's not believable on Vero. Because let me tell you, when you buy on Amazon, one of the reasons why it's murky is because people who shop on Amazon, they see Prime, they don't necessarily understand, they're not buying from Amazon. Amazon's done a very good job of making the process so fluid that you don't even know, right? If you go, Alexa, buy me a pair of New Balance sneakers, you're not going to, Alexa doesn't even tell you who the seller is, right? Like, I mean, it's just like most people don't really even know. They just see Prime and they click,
Yeah.
right? So there's a real potential argument that there is some confusion to be had on Amazon about whether you're buying from Amazon or you're buying from a seller. But with eBay, and this is the right out of the Williams and Sonoma case, by the way, but with eBay, people know, right? People know eBay. You're just kind of like, you don't know who the hell you're buying for, pardon my language, right? So I find it hard to believe that these brands actually can try to enforce distribution rights on eBay, because it's like, that's, I don't know what your expectation is when you buy from eBay, whether you're getting a factory warranty or what, but it seems less believable. But my guess is if I were to go through Bureau terms of service, there's probably a clause that says they're not allowed to use Bureau for this reason. So what you need to be doing, and what I guess my team would be doing in that situation, is similar to Amazon's telling the Bureau that this is bullshit. Part of my language. I do curse. I am from New Jersey. I am flawed. But this is BS. eBay, these guys are not really infringed upon. They're just trying to control distribution. The other thing I would do is I would, again, raise it to your politicians, right? Because the anti-competition laws in Europe and UK are so much stronger than the US in some ways that I would actually say, hey, these companies are trying to destroy my business by lying and saying, and interfering with my right to first sale. If you have a similar doctrine in the UK, I would certainly push that. But I would actually, I'd love to look at the case, and I'd love to go back, and I have to reread the Bureau terms of service, but I have to believe Bureau has clauses in there that's similar to Amazon. So Amazon, you can find it in the intellectual property policy, you can find it in the seller code of conduct, that all this stuff is that they subscribe to the first sale doctrine, and it's a violation of their policy to use a brand registry tool for such a purpose. I have to believe eBay has the same policy in the Bureau, and if not, I may reach out to some friends of mine at eBay and ask them why not.
In my experience, it's generally something like they want to say, you need to. They'll accuse you of using the assets without, the photographs, etc., without permission.
Well, okay, so this is a tricky one, but when you resell, I always tell our clients, when you set up a listing, now easier on eBay than Amazon, because Amazon you're under one common listing, right? You're under the ASIN system. With eBay, just make sure you're not using their photos, right? So you got to take your own pictures, right? And don't use any of don't copy and paste their language. Write your own stuff. Use your own photos of the product, and then because if you do use their pictures and you do take their content, then they have an argument that there's some infringement going. Then there's copyright issues, right? Because those are they have the right to use those photos. They did not give you a license to use those photos because you're not authorized. So I would say first things first is check. That's what I want to check. I want to check and see what are you guys doing in terms of how you're listing the products to make sure we're not running afoul of any other things. So that's a classic one. A lot of our clients make that mistake when they list on Amazon for the first time. They'll just take the stock photos from the website of the company. I'm like, don't do that, please. Change them.
So, right, customer abuse. If you've got a customer that buys something from you and they send you back a brick in the post, what can you do about that?
Yeah, I mean, if it happens enough times, definitely, like I said, complaint. Amazon has report abuse, email handles, and I believe even links now in Seller Central. There are ways, if it's a real problem, sometimes it's just a rite of passage, it happens once in a blue moon. Sometimes it's just better off just writing it off. But if it's happening enough or it's affecting your business, definitely escalate the issue. Send an email to Jeff, and again, talk to your members of Congress. If it's a problem, talk to us. We'll help you. But there's ways to do it. I always look for things I always say, check your voice of customer, check your VOCs, always monitor those and just see what people are saying when things are getting returned. My favorite are when you sort of have these abusive returns and the people just write this product made me sick. And then you realize that, the product was put back into inventory. So how could it have made you sick if it was never opened, right? If it's an edible product or something like that. So there's always monitor things, but there are ways to escalate this stuff, but I would definitely open a case and fight for that. If it's affecting you, if it's happening a lot, open up a case and fight. And then, if anything, I just say, reach out to us. I don't know how to tell you what we do that's good. We're good at what we do. I don't know what it is to tell you. I don't mean to sound like, The only thing is we're also very cheap. Like the other thing, the thing about me is like my mission is to end the suspension business. Like I actually want it to die. Like I hate it. I fundamentally think it's the biggest distraction, waste of time that we do. But it's such a necessary thing that we have to do. So like we become good at it because I want it to go away. It's like my mission to like, the unnecessary suspension stuff that we deal with on a day-to-day basis can just like be such a time suck, and we can all be doing better things. So we do it cheaply, we do it passionately, all with the goal of like trying to help Amazon like learn from their mistakes and not have these things happen. So if it's happening on a grand enough scale, there's things we can do to just sort of again try to get it in front of the right people, and get you some recourse for that. But certainly, start by filing a claim with Amazon. And I'm sure my team who does this on a day to day, like, I actually have a team of people who, ex Amazon sellers and whatnot who just know the stuff cold and better than I do, who probably have ways to handle it. But definitely don't take it lying down. If it happens once, yeah, maybe. Okay. But I mean, if it's happening at a level where it's really affecting your ability to do business, let us know.
It does seem to me with Amazon that there's almost like half the business is trying to get you to succeed and the other half is trying to get you to fail.
Yeah, I don't know. I think Amazon, I have a mixed feeling about it. I mean, I think they make decisions, they make them sometimes too swift, they make them without thinking through. I think that they love Amazon likes resellers because resellers do something that's really great for Prime members, which is they sell below MAP, right?
Yeah.
Resellers will commonly break and make MAP pricing, and that's awesome. So if I can buy a North Face fleece, even though I'm making a profit off it because I bought it at TJ Maxx or TK Maxx if you're in the UK, from the standpoint of it's the best price on the internet and it's below MAP, and this is why the resellers hate. This is why they hate you at the brands hate you because it's on Amazon, it's being advertised, right? It's being advertised on a website, right? Whereas like TJ Maxx does not advertise the prices, right? Like when you go into the store, you only know the prices once you walk into the store, but they're not being like broadcasted, right? You can't really see it so well. So it's like, plus those stores are multi-billion-dollar companies. So there's not a whole lot they can do to bully those guys, but they can bully the individual sellers. So using Vero sounds like the latest and greatest. I'd love to look into it more. I talk to my team and find out what we can do about it if it's a real problem, but they definitely should not be using Vero for
something that happens occasionally, and it's normally to do with the images.
Yeah, so that's the trick. Is just make sure that you're using, take your own pictures, and that should help.
Okay, that's good. Right, so claiming if you got if Amazon refunds a customer, and they because if you're like doing self-fulfilled Prime or something like that, then you sign a thing which says they have the right to do whatever they like. And my experience is, have something like a parcel had been delivered, the customer says that it didn't get delivered, and Amazon just give them all their money back, even though it was sent by an Amazon service, and then you have to do a safety claim. I mean, is there anything you can do about that as a seller?
I mean, look, if it's an issue, if it's a problem, like right now, like we're having an issue with people getting their Amazon saying like left and right that they're not getting their packages received by Amazon, right? Like they're being they're submitting 30 units and zero are getting credit for none. In this case, you've got customers abusing the system, saying, you report it to Amazon, and if it's substantial enough and it's worth your time, then you keep fighting it. You keep pushing the envelope, you keep pushing the agenda that this has happened, right? Keep opening that case, keep saying, the customer is right. Whatever evidence you can show, the more ridiculous, the better the case, right? I don't recommend necessarily you do that for a small thing, but if it happens, either a lot or it's a substantial item and it's causing you substantial losses, absolutely, you should fight it. Just keep fighting it.
Keep fighting your corner at all times.
Yeah, just be persistent. Go above. Send an email to Jeff at Amazon. Send a tweet to the Twitter team, right? Talk to your MPs or politicians. I mean, seriously, these are the things that work, right? What you're trying to do is you're trying to get out from under the AI bots and sort of low wage workers that just kind of get paid to move your case along to the next, to the back of the queue, from the front of the queue to the back of the queue, and get the people who can really make a decision. And if you feel like justified, you were really wrong in something, I think you can find relief. I absolutely do think you can find what you're looking for in that scenario. But would I do it if I'm losing $10 in the matter and it's once in a blue moon? No, I don't think it'd be worth your time or anyone's time. But if it's real, if it's happening a lot and it's it feels like abuse, or you have really substantial evidence and you want to make a point, Absolutely, go for it.
Okay, so look, I know it's something you're involved with Amazon antitrust. What is the future of that? Do you see? What do you think that what kind of things are going to happen to Amazon in the next few years?
Yeah, so I have this nonprofit called the Online Merchants Guild on the merchants onlinemerchantsguild.org. And what we do through that organization is we try to get Amazon sellers to work together and unify. And I would strongly suggest everyone just Google it, read about what we do, our court cases that we fought. But one of the things we did was we were the most cited resource in the antitrust report on Amazon's mistreatment of Amazon sellers. So during the whole tech inquiry throughout 2019, 2020, we were submitting reports to the antitrust subcommittee in Congress, basically telling them, hey, these are real experiences that Amazon sellers have experienced. You can read our submissions on the antitrust website. You can read the report on the antitrust subcommittee website for the U.S. government. It's public. And what we're trying to do is, we're trying to get the government to, one, just sort of recognize the Amazon seller as a sort of as these are their constituents, right? We're the voters, right? Amazon is one powerful company. The Amazon sellers in the United States are, 1 million plus registered voters, right? So we believe we should have a voice. And we're trying to get them to acknowledge that, yeah, Amazon makes a lot of mistakes and they do a lot of things wrong. Now, does that mean they should break up Amazon? I don't know. There was legislation that was proposed. I thought the legislation was very weak. I didn't think it was very good. So we did not necessarily support the legislation. What we tried to do, and what I still would like to do, is we try to get more Amazon sellers to participate in the organization so that we could create what's called a seller bill of rights, so that we could get some legislation passed that would basically, like, instead of having us go through this guessing game of like, what do you do in this situation? Like, we actually can have a codified federal bill of rights that when these things happen to Amazon sellers, they have certain rights, right? That way they don't have to lose sleep at night, that this may happen to them or that may happen to them. And that's what we really wanted to see. What the antitrust subcommittee proposed as far as legislation, what ultimately got proposed, in my opinion, was not sufficient. It was broken legislation. It would have led to nothing more than a decade's worth of litigation and probably very little outcome out of it. It just wasn't good. It didn't get to the root of the problem, and it just gave Amazon a big exit. Like, there's a big loophole Amazon could use to get out of it. So we didn't like the legislation that they were proposing. So in this environment, though, Amazon is still very fearful of legislation. They're very fearful of Congress. So that's why I'm saying it's a great time to leverage your members of Congress if you need to get help. If you cannot get what you want, if you have been unjust, if you're subject to some real abuse or unjust treatment, now is a great time to talk to your members of Congress and have them, ask them to write a letter and say, can you please send this to Amazon? I want to know why this is happening to me. Can you please make an inquiry for me? Because I can't get through. I'm talking to an AI bot. I want to blow my brains out. This is crazy, right?
Okay.
It's driving me up the wall. Talk to them. It's a perfect environment to do that. So, but what I would really like to do, what I would really, really like to do is I would like to raise, I don't know, maybe 10, 20, probably $30,000 a month. That's probably what we need. $30,000 a month, and hire a lobbying firm and just have our voice being, on the ground floor in Congress in Washington, D.C., have our own seller lobbying firm that we engage, representing solely our interests and our interests only, out there speaking to members of Congress so that we can push for our agendas. Because we're powerful enough that to raise $30,000 a month among millions of sellers throughout worldwide, it should not be hard. But yet it's been the hardest thing I've ever had to do. And we haven't done it yet. So we're always looking for leaders and gatherers and folks who can really be social and influential to get sellers to work together, raise the money so that we can do some real legislative change in Congress to help protect the e-commerce and Amazon seller, right? I mean, there's so many issues out there that Congress needs to address regarding selling online, including taxes, still to this day, still a mess. Nothing's being done because we just can't seem to figure out as small businesses that when we work together, we are the most powerful lobbying force in the world. Like, we will be so strong, much stronger than Amazon. So hopefully one day it'll click and resonate with certain people, and we'll get the type of leadership that we need who can really help us voice that message and get us all working together on such a goal. That's my hope, because to me, it's just important. And I do this as a volunteer thing. It's just fun for me. It's interesting. It's the future of the law. And it's cool to be on the cutting edge. So I'm happy to do it just a pro bono kind of thing that I do with my time. I think it's a lot of fun.
Oh yeah, because I think that sounds great. Because I think I mean, I know as a small business myself, you just get beaten up by everyone, and it would be great. And I feel that these big tech companies do just take the piss, as we say in the UK.
No, they take the piss. Yes.
It would be great. It would be great to have, just it all feels a bit one-sided at the moment. So,
Okay.
I've got a question. So, what is the M&A? I know you do a lot of M&A stuff. What's the M&A market like at the moment? Because there's a whole lot of activity on Amazon with these Amazon aggregators. What's going on? What are you seeing?
Okay, so Amazon Aggregate is an interesting part of our practice. We did about $200 million in Amazon M&A deals as lawyers. So we're not the broker. We're not trying to broker a deal. We're just simply a lawyer, and we're predominantly a lawyer for the seller. We took a very, very early on in the aggregator bubble in 2020. We took so in 2020 we've been working on these deals probably 2019 with some of the early aggregators. 28, I don't say as far back as 2018, but we've worked on it for a long time. And we in 2020 we took a position we're going to stop representing any aggregators, any buyers. We're very much a seller advocacy law firm. We didn't like the idea of being strong arming small sellers. We just thought that would not be a good look for us. Once we realized how common this was, we'll still represent buyers in a one-on-one deal. Like, it was just, Joe buyer versus Joe seller. That's fine, but we will not represent, big agra, not agriculture, but big aggregator.
That's good. I like that.
Yeah, we will not do that. We just don't think it's appropriate for who we are and how we identify as a law firm. So anyway, so what we saw last year is we saw a real big bubble. We saw, if you had the 23rd best avocado peeler on Amazon, you were getting top multiple for your product, even though it was just like, you just started selling the thing a year ago and you pulled it off Alibaba, it was a crazy time. So we saw multiples go from, in the twos, in terms of like closing cash, which is the only thing I really care about when I deal with my client is the closing cash. Like all these extra earnouts and gravy items, they're gravy. So I don't like to, they can be all over the place and there can be so many strings attached to them. It's better not to actually take them into consideration as value and just treat them as gravy, because they oftentimes don't work out. And if you're relying on that as a source of part of your deal, then you shouldn't do the deal. Like if you need that earnout to work out for you in order to feel like you're getting a good deal, then it's not the right deal. That's what I always tell our clients. It's just there's so many things that can go wrong, and so little recourse you have, especially since suing somebody in a deal like that can cost more than the earnout is worth in the first place. So just already a negative value type claim where the juice ain't worth the squeeze, as they say. So that's your starting point. So always focus on closing cash. So we would see closing cash for some companies like in the twos, 2.5, 2.7, going into 2020. In 2020, we saw kind of what I would say is if you're under $1 million in earnings profit, SDE, which is discretionary earnings, however you want to calculate, whatever that number was, that was the basis for which the multiple would be applied. If you went to $1 million, typically you would get 3 to 3.5 at most going into 2021 in terms of closing cash, and then maybe another 1 to 1.5 in terms of those sort of earnout possibilities, whatever they may be. But what we saw kind of going into the second half of 2021, that was 2020, is we saw a shift, and we started to see, first we saw just a number of deals we were doing going up tremendously. But then we were starting to see the multiples cracking, like just breaking new records. So suddenly brands doing under $1 million in profit were getting like 5, 6x multiples, which was crazy. So you could tell that there was a real bubble happening. Like, it was so easy. You could literally just email, hello to the list of 100 aggregators on the internet, and you'd have 100 people wanting to buy your business. It was that ridiculous how strong the market was. There were new aggregators popping up every night. I call them fly-by-night aggregators. They would just show up. They're like, oh, have you ever heard of like ABC Elemental Upside Down brands? I'm like, no, is that a thing? I'm like, oh yeah, they just formed last night. It was started by a seller, and they got funding from their dad. It was just crazy. Everybody was getting funding and doing this stuff. So yeah, it bubbled like crazy. In 2021, we did, like I said, we did over $200 million in deals last year. I would say we did over 100 million of those deals like from October to December of last. So that fourth quarter was insane. Fourth quarter was the craziest quarter of my life as a lawyer. I've never worked more in my life. I almost died. Like, it was ridiculous how much we were working. We were working Christmas, Christmas Eve, New Year's Eve, New Year's. It was just nonstop. Then 2022, you got rising interest rates. You've got rising PPC costs. You've got all sorts of things happening. All of a sudden, like, everyone's not doing very well, right? And so we had a nice, healthy inflow of LOI, letters of intent, new deals coming, but then suddenly they just weren't closing. So aggregators started shutting the doors, declaring to the world that they're done buying for now. So what we saw was basically what happened is in 2021, a lot of these aggregators got what's called aggregator indigestion. So they were acquiring too many brands and they didn't know how to manage them. They weren't as good at it as they pretended that as they claimed they were, right? So they all said they were so good at it. They actually weren't. They knew nothing. You know, some of it was just like, oh, we'll just bump up PPC. That was literally the argument. So at the end of the day, what ended up happening was, like, we're just seeing a substantial downturn in the number of deals we're doing. Multiples have come down. The offers we're seeing are like in the three, under three. If you're under, $500,000, it's like under three. It's like really small deals. Even above $1 million, we're seeing like 3 to 4 multiples. We're just not seeing what we saw last year. So multiples have come down a lot. Deal complexity and sophistication has come up a ton. So this is where now it's like, okay, the deal is a couple $1 million. We're going to see like the same law firms I used to work with at like Microsoft show up. And now it's going to take us like, and instead of closing in like 45 days, it can take like 4 or 5 months to close because the lawyers, it's the back and forth. It's just nonstop. And it just takes forever. So it's a very different environment today than it was last year. Last year I've never seen anything like it, but we did call a bubble. We did tell our clients, like, we posted on Facebook last year, like, this feels like a bubble, but nothing wrong with selling in a bubble, right? Like, not for you, like, as a seller, great time to sell. Even if your earnout doesn't work out, you got 6x when today you'd get 3. So in some ways, you made a good, if you were eager to get out. What I will say is this, and this is what was always sad about people who sold it. A lot of times, a lot of our clients, overwhelmingly, I always call up my clients afterwards and do a little bit of just a check-in and say, hey, congratulations. What are you going to buy? You're going to buy a trophy. You can get yourself a little token to remember this. What are you going to do? And just have a little chat. And the story that I always hear most is that the number one reason why they sell is because they want to take their chips off the table. In other words, they've been living in fear of Amazon shutting them down at any given moment. That's just this idea of being able to just get away from it and put it on somebody else's plate and just take the money and run was just like, it was like nirvana for them to just finally be rid of it. Like, hey, I've done this, taking it this far. At any given moment, I feel like Amazon could just pull the plug on me. Might as well just take my chips off the table and be done. And they are glad they did, but it's, that's not good for Amazon, right? When we talk about like how Amazon sellers feel, that's not what you want, right? You don't want your businesses that are running on your platform to feel that way. So
I don't know if
it shows there was a lot.
Does anyone enjoy selling on Amazon? I don't know if they do.
No, but it's an obvious necessity. They are the railroad, as we told Congress. They are the railroad of e-commerce. We can't do without them. So we're stuck with them, and that's the problem. So
I always thought it was sad because I always think that eBay is a place where people enjoy selling, but it just never...
I typically like eBay. Yes, I personally, when I still sell on the side, like not as much as I used to, but I go straight to eBay. I like eBay, but for me, it's occasional selling. But I don't think volume is hard on eBay. I think it's hard. I don't know. I don't know what it is about eBay, but I can tell you with consistency, like, most of our clients are multi-channel. They're Walmart, Amazon, eBay, Shopify, but Amazon, just with the ability that had FBA, the logistics of that, I mean, they're just 90% Amazon. Like, it's just like they just can't get the volume out of those other marketplaces as they can with Amazon. That's the problem.
I've got. It's been very interesting talking to you. I've got one last question, which I haven't warned you about.
Sure.
I'm not going to warn everyone about this. What do you do when you're not thinking about e-commerce law? What are you geeky about?
Oh, that's a good question.
Any good books recently? Seen any good films? Got anywhere interesting?
I do love to travel. So I spent 2 months this summer in Poland. My wife's Polish. We have a house by the seashore. So I have a great team who covered me and let me. So I played a lot of golf. I'm a gamer geek. I used to work for Microsoft. I have an Xbox. I'm not on PS. I do like to game when I have free time. I don't usually have free time, but when I do, it's always fun to just like grab a Joy-Con and just play a little bit. I love flight simulators. I love airplanes. I don't know. I'm just a weird guy. I just like weird stuff. And I like to just, I don't know, just like to relax. I mean, reading, I'll be honest with you, I hate reading books. Like I'm one of those people, like it's because I read for a living. Like I read all day, every day. Like I read these cases, I read, it's just like, to me, reading feels so like I'll listen to books more than I like to read the books, but it's just like, it doesn't relax me. You know what I mean? But I do, there are good books, obviously, that I like, there's certain books that, the kind of books that kind of, like Outliers was like a life-changing book for me when I was younger, right? By Malcolm Gladwell. Just
It's a
read
very
that.
good
It's
book.
just, it was an awesome book. Richard Branson's first book I read when I was 17 years old, right? That was awesome, right? Or 18 years old, whenever it came out in 98, so probably 18. So, I love that story. I love the book. I love the story of, the original story of the high school dropout who just built this, empire. And yeah, he did some hustling on his
His
way
dad
up
was
to the
pretty
top.
rich. He went to his first job interview in like a Rolls Royce. So
Is that true?
yeah, he's not nearly as he's pretty well
No.
connected.
No, well, I think you have to be the start airline. Like, there's always that element. There's always something missing. But what I liked the story was like, that he was kind of like he was doing tax evasion. Like his
Oh
first,
yeah, definitely did
Virgin
that.
Records. Yeah, Virgin Records was built on tax evasion. And just got caught. And he learned his lesson, and just fascinating story. Meeting Tubular Bells and the whole story there. But and again, I was 18, so you take it with a grain of salt. But I enjoyed that book. I'm trying to think of the books I've read recently, but I just don't and I don't read as much as I should, but I do try to listen to books, as much as I can. Before bed I try to like just put on an audiobook and listen. But it's weird how like I read so much during the day. I read so much case law and so much crap. It's just like it's like it's just like it's turned me off to the idea of reading for pleasures. It's like it's a
Oh no,
hard
I
concept.
read a lot, so
Yeah, I know. It's just like I read too much. I'm like, I've read enough. I'm like, I'm done.
but
Just
I
tell me
can't.
what.
Do you know
Tell me
what
what's
I
the.
get? When I'm reading a contract or something, I can get to about through the first paragraph or something, and it just does my head in. So I can see what you mean.
Yeah,
It's not like
yeah.
for you. It's not just like reading a book for you. It's like reading the densest thing, which is the hardest to understand.
Oh, it's very dry. Yeah, and then a purchase agreement contract and M&A contract is the worst. But I, I, those I enjoy. I've always been a fine print. Like, I'll tell you my life story is like, okay, so I was an Amazon seller before there was a thing, right? I was flipping stuff in the early 2000s before FBI. Never thought you could make money or a living, right? I'm like paying for law school selling on Amazon, but I'm not like, this is going to replace my income. I could make my whole life off of this, right? I so I just kind of gave up on it, and I would do it as a side hustle. And then I find out like 12, 15 years later that, oh no, if I had just stuck with it, I probably would have been immensely rich and would have been early to the party. And so I always have this story of being early to the party, but a lot of it is fine print. So like I was a really big like mile hacker when I was in the 90s. Like I had already
Oh,
figured
okay.
out these credit card, like signing up for the credit cards and getting those bonus miles and
Oh
playing
yeah.
different games and churning because I like to travel and I didn't have any money. I was a student, right? Like this was in college. So like I was like, I like the mile hack. Like I like to read the fine print. I was always attracted to fine print, finding the little loopholes and ways to kind of game the system. It was always kind of fun. But there was no such thing as a blog then. So I didn't know you could write blogs about it and make millions, just being the blogger of it. Like you got the points guy now. So I've always kind of been too early to a lot of parties. But no, I don't know, man. I love I've always had a secret passion of wanting to be a pilot. So I really do like when I'm not hanging out with my family, we're not doing like, stuff you do as a family. Like I've always liked the flight simulators. I like to just kind of go to different places and see stuff. And I like to travel and I like to, I don't know, just go places. I don't know. I don't really have a sound hobby. I don't really have a
No,
good one, but
yeah. Look, for someone who doesn't say, you've answered that's possibly the longest answer to that question that anyone's given.
I
So I
don't know.
think
It's a weird.
you've
Nobody's ever
got.
asked me the question, and it's like, and then I think of it now. I'm thinking they're weird. So I'm sorry. I'm trying to defend them. I'm being a little
No, I think it's
defensive.
good.
I'm
Look,
trying to tell you they're weird.
it's supposed to be a like a question to I don't know.
Yeah.
It's not a trick question, but it's supposed to slightly stretch you. So Paul, look, it's been great chatting to you. And what was the name of your site again? It was your
So
seller advocacy group.
so the seller advocacy group is onlinemerchantskill.org, and anyone who wants to work with us in our suspension program, it's sellerbasics.com. And my email is Paul at ecom.law, which is our law firm, ecom.law, Rafelson Law. And I'd love to hear from you and meet anyone out there. We're always looking to meet good folks. But yeah, that's what we got.
Great. Okay, lovely to speak to you, and good luck for the future.
Fingers crossed, man. And let us know if we can be of any help. Like, please reach out to me. Let me know. Okay. Let my team take a look at it, because sometimes they see things that even I miss. So they're very good. So I welcome you to give them a try.
Good.
So
Okay.
thank you so much.
Thanks.
Cheers.
Bye.
Bye bye.